Hey everybody. The ideas of hijackings and piracy have existed ever since man first developed transportation. On the open seas of the 17th century, nautical piracy was in full swing, with pirate crews seizing and raiding ships of all sizes. However, as our modern age began to roll around, a new and exciting type of piracy took hold. Air piracy, commonly known as skyjacking, is the act of illegally seizing possession of an aircraft. The perpetrators of such crimes have had a multitude of reasons for wanting to commandeer an airplane. Some sought political asylum, some wanted to make a statement, some desired a ransom with the airline passengers as hostages. A surprisingly low number of skyjackers committed the crime for monetary gain, and fewer still got away with it. This is because, in the world of air piracy, virtually everyone who has ever hijacked a plane has been identified, caught, or killed. From the first recorded airline hijacking on February the 21st, 1931, every single instance of the infraction has been conclusively resolved in such a way that their cases could be officially classified as solved. Every single case, that is, except for one. A nearly 50-year-old cold case that inspired countless investigations over multiple decades, many of which have brought us closer to the truth, but remains as unsolved as it was on November 24th, 1971. This is the story of the only unsolved air piracy case in commercial aviation history. The story of D.B. Cooper, the Skyjacker who got away. It was the afternoon of Thanksgiving Eve on Wednesday, November 24th, 1971. At the Northwest Orient Terminal in Portland's International Airport, a man approached the counter looking to buy a ticket. The man was reported to be in his mid-40s, about 6 feet tall and wearing a suit with a black tie, carrying a black attaché case. The man identified himself as Dan Cooper. Cooper never actually called himself DB, but a news reporter confused the hijacker's pseudonym with the name of an eliminated suspect, and his name was printed as DB in early reports. Cooper purchased a ticket for the 30-minute Flight 305 with service to Seattle. Cooper boarded the Boeing 727-100 and took his place in seat 18C, although some reports claim he was seated elsewhere. Cooper ordered a bourbon and soda before takeoff. The flight departed at 2:50 p.m., and soon after, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner, who initially discarded the note but was convinced to open it when Cooper stated, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." The exact contents of DB's note are unknown, but Schaffner stated that the note reaffirmed what Cooper had already said. After Schaffner took a seat next to him, Cooper opened his briefcase to reveal 8 red cylinders attached to wires and a battery. Cooper then made his demands very clear. He wanted $200,000 in negotiable American currency, roughly equivalent to $1.27 million today, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck in Seattle to refuel the plane. After Schaffner made her way back from the cockpit where she informed the pilots, Cooper was now wearing black sunglasses. Communications were exchanged between the aircraft, SeaTac Air Traffic Control, and federal authorities. The aircraft circled Puget Sound for 2 hours while the FBI acquired Cooper's demands. The plane arrived at SeaTac at 5:39 p.m. Passengers were let off after Cooper directed the plane to a bright strip of the runway and ordered the windows closed. DB rejected the military parachutes he was given in favor of civilian parachutes taken from a local skydiving school. While on the ground, Cooper ordered another bourbon and soda and even offered to request meals for the flight crew. While the plane refueled, Cooper detailed his next commands to the flight crew. The plane would set a southeast course to Mexico City at a speed of 100 knots and an altitude of 10,000 feet. Cooper wanted the cabin unpressurized, the landing gear in takeoff landing position, and the wing flaps lowered 15 degrees. After changing the plan following several arrangements and considerations with the pilot, the plane took off with the aft staircase deployed at 7:40 p.m., although it was later closed. 2 F-106 fighters trailed Cooper's plane above and below, along with 3 other planes trailing behind. After takeoff, DB ordered the crew into the cockpit. This would be the last time anyone physically saw DB Cooper. At 8:00 p.m., a warning indicated that the aft air stair had been reopened. Then, at 8:13, the aircraft's tail moved upward suddenly, requiring adjustments. When the flight landed at Reno Airport with the air stair still deployed, it was determined that Cooper was no longer on board. He had jumped off somewhere between 8 o'clock and 10:15 p.m. in the airspace between Seattle and Reno. Immediately after these events, local and federal authorities got to work investigating the case, and they continued for many years. On board the plane, a few scraps of evidence were found: 66 unidentified fingerprints, Cooper's clip-on tie, and 2 of his 4 requested parachutes. Composite sketches were also developed based on the accounts of witnesses. 800 suspects were initially identified, and most were soon eliminated. A search area was difficult to establish due to the many variables involved in the flight, and there remained the problem that none of the Air Force pilots trailing the plane had actually seen Cooper jump, visually or on radar. A recreation of the incident with FBI agents dropping a weight from the plane determined that the tail movement at 8:13 was likely Cooper making his jump. Initial estimations placed DB's landing site somewhere around the Clark and Cowlitz counties of Washington state, and large swaths of land in these regions were quickly searched by FBI agents as well as local authorities. Bodies of water, mountain roads, forests, and farmhouses were searched from top to bottom with no results. Aerial surveillance was done with similar results. Throughout March and April of 1972, a massive search party drawn from the Air Force, National Guard, and civilian volunteers conducted what is arguably the largest manhunt in U.S. history, but still, nothing was found. After searches proved ineffective, authorities turned their attention towards locating the ransom bills until 1974, but this too proved fruitless. Later analysis of flight paths indicated that the actual drop zone was likely further south than the original estimate. Searches and investigations continued throughout the years. Other significant pieces of evidence were found in the following years. Still on the plane were Cooper's tie clip and 8 filter-tipped cigarette butts. In November of 1978, a hunter found, within Flight 305's path, a placard bearing instructions on how to lower a 727's air stair. In February of 1980, an 8-year-old named Brian Ingram found several packets of $20 bills along the banks of the Columbia River. These bills were confirmed to have been among the ransom money given to Cooper. In 2007, the FBI announced they had compiled a partial DNA profile from the tie, but they were unsure whether the DNA was Cooper's. Many other pieces of evidence were found on Cooper's tie, including fragments of bismuth, aluminum, and titanium. These suggested that Cooper was likely a chemist, metallurgist, or engineer, as these are the only jobs where he would have come into contact with these metals in the early 70s. Later analyses found even more metal fragments, including cesium and strontium sulfide, which were even rarer in the 70s. The few possible applications for them in that time period were the production of cathode ray tubes and, interestingly enough, Boeing's own supersonic transport project. It has been suggested that Cooper may have been a Boeing employee. Later, in 2017, pieces of foam and cloth were found in the Pacific Northwest that are believed to have been part of DB's parachute. In the many years following Cooper's jump, the FBI has done large amounts of profiling to identify Cooper. Several things are relatively clear about DB. Due to his knowledge of the surrounding terrain and his nearly infeasible knowledge of the 727 itself, Cooper is believed to have been very knowledgeable in the field of aircraft. Some of the methods Cooper employed, like lowering the aft air stair during flight, were so unknown at the time that even most flight crews were completely unaware of it. Based on the actions of similar criminals, FBI profilers believe that Cooper's financial situation was desperate at the time. Investigators also noted that Cooper avoided 2 of the most effective methods of criminal identification by both wearing dark sunglasses and retrieving his note after writing it. This indicated that Cooper was also knowledgeable in avoiding criminal detection. Cooper is also believed to have planned his heist meticulously, as his choice of clothing, a business suit, and his choice of day, Thanksgiving Eve, would make hitchhiking out of the woods and getting back to work on time much easier. The only element which Cooper did not seemingly plan out well was the jump itself. Cooper was initially thought to have been a skydiver or a paratrooper, but this was later dismissed, as the speed, weather conditions, and choice of parachute during the flight were not ideal for jumping and were in fact quite dangerous, leading to the possibility that Cooper may not have survived the jump or that he may have lost the ransom during the fall. Despite this, a massive number of possible suspects have been suggested during the investigation of the case. Here are a few of them, and whether or not they fit the bill. A man named Kenneth Christensen was suspected of being Cooper due to his similarity to Cooper's reported appearance, as well as behaviors, and the fact that he obtained a large sum of money seemingly from nowhere. Christensen was ruled out by the FBI due to him being a poor match to witness descriptions, and the fact that Christensen had more experience in skydiving than Cooper seemed to have. Another suspect was William Gossett. Gossett was a military veteran who was reportedly obsessed with the D.B. Cooper hijacking, and later claimed that he was responsible. Gossett's appearance was similar to Cooper's, and his son stated that Gossett, who was normally in a difficult situation financially, showed them wads of cash only months after the hijacking. In 1988, Gossett changed his name and became a priest. Many investigators theorized this was to conceal his identity. However, Gossett was dismissed as a subject due to lack of direct evidence and the fact that Gossett was likely not in the area at the time of the hijacking. Robert Rackstraw was also suspected based on a physical resemblance, his history of similar activities, and supposedly decoded communications, but Rackstraw was one of the first to be ruled out due to a lack of evidence, a mismatch in age, and a lack of physical similarity. The case of Walter R. Recca is a particularly compelling one. In 2008, Recca confessed to being the hijacker and gave details not previously known to the public. Recca gave a detailed and in-depth description of what he claimed were the events following his jump: landing near Cle Elum, Washington, eating at a cafe, and meeting a garbage truck driver whom he called Cowboy. After some investigations, a man named Jeff Osiadax was discovered to have worked as a garbage truck driver in 1971 and matched Recca's descriptions. Osiadax described meeting a man resembling Cooper on the night of November 24th and conversing with him at the cafe. Remarkably, Osiadax's story matched Recca's almost identically, and both stories roughly corresponded to what is known of Cooper. A forensic linguist could find no discrepancies in the documents pertaining to Recca's case. To this day, Recca has one of the strongest connections to Cooper of all suspects currently known. Another convincing suspect was William J. Smith. The evidence supporting Smith being Cooper is circumstantial but plentiful. Smith was the correct age, had aspired to participate in air combat, was involved in a bankruptcy that would leave him strapped for cash, and even knew an Ira Daniel Cooper in high school, a possible inspiration for the name. Smith worked for a railroad company, which would both explain the metal filings on his tie and would aid him in escaping the jump zone via train. One last suspect is Dwayne Weber. Weber had plentiful experience with crime, and 3 days before his death, he reportedly told his wife, "I am Dan Cooper." Weber's wife had no knowledge of Cooper, but later learned of his identity from a friend. Weber's wife recalled that Weber often dreamed about jumping from a plane and leaving fingerprints on the aft stairs. Weber had a knee injury that he claimed came from jumping out of a plane, and like Cooper, Weber drank bourbon and chain-smoked cigarettes. The FBI had previously dismissed Weber as a subject, but later admitted that there was no direct evidence ruling him out. Still, after years of investigation and thousands of suspects, the world still awaits the discovery of Cooper's identity. In the year following the hijacking, no fewer than 15 copycat hijackings were attempted, all of which failed. It seems that Cooper had perfected the art of skyjacking where all others had failed, although his fate is still unknown. In the wake of Cooper's hijacking, a number of new security protocols were implemented at airports, many of which can still be seen today. Cooper continued to remain a cultural icon, although the FBI officially suspended their investigation in 2016. A 28-part packet containing the sum of the FBI's investigations are free for the public to view on their website, and many groups continue to search for the truth on their own. And who knows, one of these days one of these groups may come across a crucial piece of evidence or a shocking new testimony. But until then, only one thing is known for sure. Whether or not D.B. Cooper succeeded in his heist, he was undoubtedly successful in creating a mystery to endure the years to come.